I'm a solo developer, which means I do all my own pixel art, music, programming, and writing. I was able to produce all the assets with really no people to manage, no external deadlines, and no one's own preferences in the design to worry about but my own. The area that I had the least experience in was definitely pixel art. I had done some for fun in the past, but I really had not arrived at a unified style when I started this project. The restriction of developing for the Game Boy was actually really helpful in that way, because the technical limitations really put you in a box, and they standardize things like the pixel dimensions, they make you stick to a limited palette, and those kind of limitations can be pretty helpful when you're trying to figure out how to depict things visually. One type of asset that I'd made before was tileable houses. When I was younger, I'd spent time using Pokemon ROM hacking map editors, and I had some familiarity with creating maps from tile sets. I practiced some of those skills in RPG Maker as well. So the first thing I needed was a tile set and some sprites. That's what allowed me to start experimenting with gameplay in an environment that felt like my own. Pokemon, and especially Gen 2 Pokemon, so Gold, Silver, and Crystal, was my main influence for the look of this initial tile set. I think those early Pokemon tile sets are very minimalistic, but they're very effective. They have this cohesive aesthetic, and I think that by Gen 2 they managed to look great, especially through the use of color. The first sort of test areas that I created were closer to a Pokemon Yellow vibe, visually, than anything. Reddish, orangish sprites on a bluish background. It's utilizing color, but rarely in a way that expanded beyond a single 4-color palette in the background and a single 3-color palette for the sprites in any given area. The town of Corndale came first, and in the finished version of the game, Corndale and its surrounding areas have the most hints at that original visual style that I was going for. Corndale is actually relatively unchanged from the pre-alpha version. It's made from relatively few tiles, just this original tiny house, a simple tree design, and a grass tile for the floor. Clean, simple, minimalistic. The sprites that I started with were much sloppier by my own standards. My philosophy for this project starting out was just draw it sloppily and then go back and change it later. That did end up coming back to bite me in a number of ways, but it worked well enough here with this sort of blob protagonist talking to triangle-shaped enemies and NPCs. Those starting out were just placeholders. So as I was experimenting, I quickly latched onto the idea that these little triangular characters were candy corns, and that seemed to flow naturally into a Halloween theme. Another way that I was pulling from the design of early Pokemon is that I really liked the rhythm of how enemy encounters work in the overworld. So once I found a way to trigger enemy encounters in a similar way, that became the rough basis for the design. At this point, I was just kind of trying to move forward with the design to see where it would go. So since I had a more versatile outdoor tile set than an indoor one, I quickly abandoned the idea of a puzzle game that took place entirely in a lab, and I started working on a design that had a greater emphasis on overworld exploration and NPC interactions.